Hello, BTS fans. Amid the dense crowd and the flashing lights of the cameras, two of the biggest names in South Korean music seemed unable to hide their emotions. Jungkook and Jimin, the two main pillars of BTS, were seen looking down in deafening silence as the sound of Jin, who had just completed his military service, singing, "I Will Come to You," with sincerity and poise shattered the mental defenses of anyone watching. The question is no longer, are they crying? But why are those tears unstoppable? This event is not part of the show, nor is it a promotional gimmick. There is no formal stage, no typical concert grandeur setting. There is only one microphone, one voice, and three hearts tied together in a long history of friendship, sacrifice, and loyalty. When Jin began his first lyrics in a soft but heavy voice, silence spread from the VIP area to the outer rows of fans and media crews. Jimin, who stood on the right side, covered his mouth with trembling palms, while Jungkook looked down, his eyes closed, as if trying to hold back something he had been holding back for a long time. "I will come to you" is a sentence that on that night sounded more than the title of a song. It is a promise, a reminder, and a form of unconditional love from a brother to two sisters who have gone through all the seasons in the same struggle. Several eyewitnesses who are not far from the site said that this moment happened unexpectedly. Jin, who was originally only scheduled to give a short greeting to the media after his service was over, suddenly asked permission to sing a song. With no musical accompaniment and no official cue from his management team, he began singing, "I Will Come to You," a song he once called one of the songs that touched his youth. However, the public never knew that this song turned out to have a much deeper meaning, especially in relation to Jungkook and Jimin. A few seconds after the song started, the changes in Jimin and Jungkook's faces were obvious. They no longer stand out as celebrities. They stand as two human children who hold wounds, longing, and relief that cannot be expressed through words. Their cries are not just an emotional response, but a manifestation of the pressure, trauma, and sense of loss that have been hidden behind the stage and spotlights. Why this song? Why did this happen at the airport? Why did Jin choose to convey his emotional message not through a press conference, but through a trembling but confident voice? These questions sparked heated discussions among fans as well as observers of popular culture. Some judge that this is part of a long overdue emotional reconciliation between the three. Others believe that Jin consciously chose this song as an implicit message about how much he understands the mental burden that his two colleagues are carrying in his absence. Regardless, one thing that is undeniable is that this moment has become a symbol of the depth of personal relationships of BTS members that cannot be judged by sales figures or international awards. But amid the emotional turmoil and waves of sympathy that flooded social media, a fundamental question arose that could not be ignored. Did this event really happen as it seemed? Or was there another narrative deliberately set up to create a dramatic effect and trigger massive public attention? We live in an era when the boundaries between reality and narrative construction are becoming increasingly blurred. An emotional moment can go viral in a matter of minutes, but not everything that goes viral is a representation of objective truth. In this context, Jungkook and Jimin's tearful reaction when Jin sings, "I Will Come to You," is not only the center of attention, but also the subject of speculation, analysis, and even conspiracy theories. Not a few netizens questioned, is this really spontaneous? Did the moment really happen without a hidden scenario? Or is this part of a narrative designed to build image, arouse sympathy, and strengthen ARMY's emotional loyalty to BTS? It should be noted that a large amount of visual documentation and video footage of these events is circulating on platforms such as TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Some of them show moments with very strategic shooting angles, too strategic for a spontaneous event. The camera seemed to be focused on Jungkook's face even before the first lyrics were sung. Jimin, who was standing not far from Jin, was captured on camera in his most emotionally vulnerable moment with near-perfect framing. Is all this just a coincidence? Or is there a larger narrative management going on? We are not in a position to give an absolute conclusion. But as a media that promotes journalistic integrity, we feel the need to raise this possibility. It is important for the public to realize that emotions are not the only measure of truth. A touching moment is not necessarily free from engineering. A single cry captured on camera can be the result of real psychological pressure, but it can also be part of a communication instrument strategically designed by the management or public relations team. This criticism is not intended to belittle the depth of emotion Jungkook and Jimin may have felt, but to challenge the way we, as media consumers, respond to information. Are we still able to distinguish between real experiences and emotional consumption that have been packaged in such a way as to arouse mass sympathy? In an algorithm-driven digital society, any expression of grief could easily turn into a commodity. Every tear becomes content. Each song lyric can be interpreted as a hidden message. The critical question we must ask, then, is, are we witnessing an authentic emotional moment? Or are we consuming a polished narrative to maximize the psychological impact on the audience? The sources underlying this news do come from a variety of open information channels. Some of the video footage comes from the accounts of fans who were present directly at the location. But not a few materials circulating in the form of re-upload, re-edit, and even a montage that has been added sound effects and artificial narration. Under these conditions, the validity of the information becomes very vulnerable to manipulation. Thus, we feel it is important to convey that the veracity of each piece of information in circulation still requires further verification. We invite you, dear readers, to reflect again. Did the crying really represent a deep and real sadness? Or was it just a response magnified by social pressure and public expectations of the relationship between BTS members? Did Jin spontaneously choose the song, "I Will Come to You," to express his feelings, or was it a strategic decision chosen by the team behind the scenes? It should be emphasized that these questions are not intended to defame or cast doubt on the sincerity of Jin, Jungkook, or Jimin. Rather, it is part of an effort to foster a culture of critical thinking among the public. In the world of entertainment, especially on a global level like BTS, nothing is entirely simple. Every moment can have more than one meaning. Each action can have more than one purpose. Then we ask you, do you believe that this moment is purely an emotional expression, or is it a professionally packaged emotional construct? Are visible tears a form of release of emotions that have long been pent up, or is it a very clever communication strategy? And more importantly, have we as a public been too quick to believe without questioning the truth of what we see and hear? There is no definitive answer, and probably never will be. But in every doubt, there is an opportunity to think more deeply. And from every question we ask, a new awareness is born of how we should respond to information, not as passive consumers, but as individuals who actively filter, verify, and reflect on every narrative that comes our way. Thank you. One thing to look at carefully is how this event instantly divided public opinion. On the one hand, there is a large group of fans who sincerely believe that the moment is real, that Jungkook and Jimin's tears are an emotional response born from the depth of their relationship with Jin. They believe that the song, "I Will Come to You," was not chosen randomly, but because it has a very strong personal meaning between the three of them. But on the other hand, there are also groups that are beginning to question the credibility of the moment. They highlighted the timing that was too precise, the shooting angle that was too focused, as well as the media reaction that felt like it had been prepared in advance. From the perspective of media analysis, these events can be read as a form of emotional scripting, the process by which elements of emotion are strategically arranged to produce a particular psychological impact in the eyes of the audience. However, this does not necessarily mean that the moment is fake. It could be reality and narrative construction go side by side. Yet again, the public must continue to be trained to distinguish which parts are authentic emotional realities and which parts are shaped for the benefit of the media and publicity. It is also worth noting how this momentum appears to coincide with a transitional phase in BTS's career as a whole. Jin has just returned from his mandatory military service, while Jungkook and Jimin are facing a period of contemplation in their individual careers. Feelings of uncertainty, emotional emptiness, as well as accumulated expectations can create a psychological vulnerability that culminates in the form of a tearful expression when a certain moment is touched. But did the moment really arise naturally, or was it organized within the framework of strategic communication? This is a question that we should reflect on together. Of course, the public should not necessarily be cynical about every form of emotional expression. A balance between empathy and skepticism is needed. Is the narrative formed from this event only aimed at affirming that the relationship between BTS members remains solid? Or are there broader goals, such as maintaining the stability of public support for the group amid the post-militarization uncertainty of most of its members? In this case, it cannot be overlooked the fact that the media response took place so quickly and so neatly. In the less than 2 hours since the incident occurred, a number of YouTube accounts have published reaction videos, cinematic edits, and analytical reviews emphasizing the emotional power of Jungkook and Jimin's cries. Several online news portals ran big headlines that seemed to corner readers on a single interpretation: that this moment is a symbol of the eternal brotherhood between the three of them. Are we, as media consumers, consciously being led to believe something that has not yet been fully verified? We would like to invite readers not to stop at the surface of information. Try asking in-depth questions to every detail you consume. Who uploaded the video first? From what angle was the video taken? Is there an emotion sensor that can detect the authenticity of a person's cry from a digital recording? Is this narrative driven more by visual evidence or by collective assumptions shaped by the majority of public reaction? Furthermore, it is questionable whose interests actually benefit from this moment. Is it just a mere reaffirmation of the emotional connection between members? Or is there an industry agenda behind it? For example, the preparation of a comeback, the restoration of public confidence, or even the rebuilding of the image after a series of events that have not yet been disclosed to the public. Considering the history of the relationship between BTS members, especially Jin, Jungkook, and Jimin, it cannot be separated from the strong emotional nuances. Jin, as the oldest member, is often considered a protective, mature, and wise figure. Jungkook, the magne, has historically had an intense emotional attachment to Jin. So did Jimin, who on several occasions seemed very emotionally connected to Jin, both on stage and in private life. Therefore, it is understandable why an event like this can cause a great emotional resonance among fans. But understanding against the background of this relationship should not prevent the public from remaining reflective. Taking into account the complexity of these events, we would like to emphasize that the truth is not something to be swallowed raw. It is precisely in this type of situation that the public needs to take an active role as an intelligent observer. Do not be easily dragged into the mass flow of emotions. Don't jump to conclusions from short pieces of video or from a single narrative formed by a single medium. Cross-verify. Reanalysis. Ask a question. Keep digging. Because in a world full of visual and narrative manipulation, only those who keep asking will find answers. And in the end, one profound question worth pondering together is this: are the tears we see really indicative of human fragility, or rather a symbol of the power of a narrative that has long been constructed by industry? There is one fact that we should objectively highlight. that BTS is not just a music group, but a global cultural entity with enormous influence. Each action, expression, or interaction of its members no longer serves only as a form of personal communication, but rather as an element in a public communication system that is consumed by millions of people at the same time. Therefore, it is not an exaggeration to say that every tear shed, especially in public spaces, cannot be separated from the influence of social constructions and collective expectations. Did the moment Jin sang, "I will come to you," and the accompanying cry just happen? Or are the three of them fully aware that in front of them are thousands of eyes, cameras, and microphones recording, as well as millions of pairs of virtual eyes waiting for every second of the recorded expression? This brings us to the fundamental question of authenticity in popular culture. In a world so filled with visual content, can something still be called real just because it seems authentic? Or is it precisely the expertise in packing authenticity has become part of the industry itself? Let us examine it further. The song, "I Will Come to You" by Jin is not a random song. The lyrics of this song are loaded with messages of hope, sacrifice, and commitment to someone who is in darkness. When you feel all alone and the world has turned its back on you, "I will come to you." The sentence itself carries a very strong emotional weight, especially if placed in the context of the relationship between Jin, Jimin, and Jungkook that has been going on for more than a decade. However, this song selection in the airport crowd, after a long break from the stage, and right in front of two of the most emotionally vulnerable members, was too precise to be called a mere coincidence. If it is true that the moment was spontaneous, then it shows how deep and real the bond existed between them. But if it turns out that the moment was planned, then it shows the sophistication of emotional communication in the South Korean entertainment industry that is able to manipulate public perception very effectively. Again, the two possibilities do not negate each other. It could be both happen at the same time. This is the paradox in contemporary celebrity culture. Reality and narrative can no longer be firmly separated. Why does the public tend to accept, as it is, any visualization of grief from a public figure? Is it because we are all looking for a reflection of our own emotions in them? Are we projecting our sense of loss, loneliness, and longing onto idols, and thus their every tear becomes a kind of reinforcement of existence for ourselves? This phenomenon deserves a deeper study. In many cases, digital societies tend to welcome narratives of grief from public figures because they establish emotional closeness. There's a sense of connection. There is a feeling that the star, despite life at the peak of popularity, remains an ordinary mortal who can cry, be fragile, and lose. But it should be underlined that this connectedness is very vulnerable to exploitation. In the modern entertainment industry setting, emotional expression can be a very valuable commodity. Each cry can translate into increased traffic, merchandise sales, a surge in replays, and a strengthening of the personal brand. Here comes the tipping point. Are Jungkook and Jimin's tears a reflection of real emotional depth? Or is it a reflection of the burden of roles they continue to carry before the world? Is Jin singing because he really wants to convey something unspoken? Or because he knows very well that a moment like this will strengthen the public's perception of solidarity between them? And most urgently, have we as a public neglected our ability to think critically simply because we are too eager to believe in beautiful and moving narratives? We're not handing out answers. We're just throwing doubt. And from that doubt, we can build a healthier understanding of how information is constructed, delivered, and digested in today's digital society.